Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 8 and Third Reich events installed. Let's continue on with preparing for the Great War. Okay, so let's see. Gun ability, twin engine airplanes are stolen. Okay. So we don't know specifically who. Now, we do have on spot counter-espionage at level 2 priority, and we're all full up on spies. Okay. Let's see. Amphibious warfare equipment. Good. It's here, so we've got that. It doesn't, you know, it will help those units. It doesn't help overall make our armed forces hugely better. But we will be pursuing some invasions and other. Go with rocket artillery. The Germans really liked rocket artillery. There was a whole Reich program for developing rockets. I think, okay, here we go. The Spanish state has annexed the Spanish Republic, which is now part of their country, so Spain is one, and the Spanish state enforced the end of the Spanish Civil War. So now we are here. They has moved the, I think that second thing is moves the capital to Madrid and sets that up. They inherit whatever I think is left of the Republican army at the time. So I know I've seen sometimes when they become my ally some what appears to be former Republican units. They also have colonies down here, which will be useful to us if we can get them into the Axis. And that's good. And back to the rockets. Because I don't think rockets were banned as part of the Treaty of Versailles. But I know that the Reich was putting money into rocket research. Some of the rocket research, whether they really thought was practical or was just a cover disguise. And you know, in the late 1920s, I can't really be sure at this point, unless somebody has documentation that shows one or the other. But they actually tried to work on mail delivery rockets. You know, you want to get mail fast from Dortmund to Cologne, shoot a rocket at it. Yeah, that's a good idea. That'll get it there quick. You know, the mail stuffed inside the rocket lands. Maybe they were thinking parachutes or something like that, but nothing could go wrong there. That can only be reliable mail delivery service, and I'm sure it won't hurt anybody or any buildings or anything. Can you get it to land on the roof of the post office building? Okay, so yeah, you know, but I don't know whether they really sort of, you know, 1920s rockets are the new thing, you know, like flying cars or whatever, and so they thought they were gonna do that, or whether it was just a cover for, you know, military building. And it continued after it became the Wehrmacht and the Nazis. I think considerably because it was an army program, so the army was doing it. as opposed to the Air Force. So close air support was now an Air Force program, and the Army was looking for a similar sort of somewhat rear area based rockets shooting in support of attacks here kind of thing. And that's what they were looking at. And out at Peenemünde there was both a Heer Army facility and a Luftwaffe facility. They were right next to each other. The Luftwaffe develops, in my opinion, not really a rocket, because it's not a rocket. The V1, because it's a ram fuel jet, ram jet using liquid fuel. No, but you can have a liquid fuel rocket like the V2, but pictured here in a test model, so they had the test patterns on it. They went with the ramjet technology that created that, buzz bomb sound that the British called it that. But one of the key things is that it flew, meaning it had some wings on it, and that created lift, and it flew that way. Where the Army rockets, they were ballistic, in that the fins were only there for guidance, not for any lift, and so a much higher arcing. German Army rockets, and I'm being very specific about the term German Army rockets, used spin stabilization. They didn't have, and they were very, very good. They were probably in my opinion, the best, and I think anybody else's opinion, the best rockets of World War II. The sort of the Stuka Unfuts, the Howling Cows, or whatever you want to call the more conventional that you see taken, the tactical rockets. That they were sort of short and stubby, round, and they didn't have fins. And like I was saying, they were spin stabilized. The main propulsion comes out the back to propel it, but then they had one or more little side jets that came off from the main that siphoned off a bit of the propulsion to spin the rocket like as if it were a bullet. Obviously they didn't launch it out of a rifled tube or anything. They just launched it either out of a crate or out of a unrifled tube. But it was the spinning that stabilized it, and it worked really well. And for a rocket and for this time, it was rather accurate. It doesn't mean the people who are laying the rockets or setting them up are necessarily going to be accurate in hitting their target, but meaning they would consistently hit a smaller area of ground. They would fly more reliably. The problem with this was it was more expensive than the fin stabilized rockets that like the Soviets used, the American used, or the Waffen-SS rockets. The Waffen-SS set up, or through the SS, set up their own factory, and they built fin stabilized rockets that were cheaper to mass produce, not quite as accurate, but they were looking at sort of launch a bunch of them as sort of an area blast weapon, which is how the Army used them too. But the Waffen-SS argued that their type should be the type because they were so much cheaper to produce. The net effect was two rocket systems being transported, supply system being transported through the German supply network, which just made even more problems than trying to do the Waffen-SS in relatively much fewer numbers, because the Waffen-SS was much smaller than the Army. But they did it. You can look at some of the the late war half tracks that are like fully armored, but they're if you know about it, they're sort of the Muleter type tracks, some of them, and that had the banks of rockets on the back. You can tell an Army one from a Waffen-SS one. The Army ones have the two layers of horizontal tubes. The the Waffen-SS had two sets of just rails that they would set the rockets on. Otherwise, the vehicles were identical, just the two mounting systems. So, German Army is sort of the. I sort of share this opinion, but the sort of perception is that Germans over-engineer things, over-design things, overbuild. Yep, well built, but overdo it, kind of thing. And this sort of what they did with the rockets by doing this. So we're going to do the rockets. My understanding, and one of the reasons I'm doing this is, well, one of the reasons is because of history, and I like having the various things. And doing this research here would help some of the paths through here, I think, because once you start making more rockets, it does it. But the other thing I understand is with Black Ice 8, artillery is more of a adding more, regular artillery is not doing so much as adding a lot more. It does add some more soft attack bonus to it, but it adds more combined arms effect bonus to the division instead of just a lot more soft attack. I think, from what have been regular artillery, then medium artillery and heavy artillery, those add more and more soft attack, and maybe hard attack too. But what I understand with the rocket artillery, to make a difference, they do add considerably more soft attack, so that we may be building some divisions for operating against forts and other things on the Eastern Front, not necessarily fort buster divisions, but just some infantry divisions with both an artillery unit and a rocket artillery unit within the division. So we may be doing that. I have no plans of making, and there were historically, just like this here, this is an artillery detachment with heavy artillery and an anti-aircraft gun. Germany did have artillery divisions. They didn't, generally, as my understanding, go in and fight as part of like the front lines, is that they were assigned to either a corps or army headquarters, and then that headquarters would send a company or battalion out to other divisions and shift them around as needed. It was more of a administrative, including supply elements for it, and gave instead of putting it into organically into a division, it was something that, as higher command, felt that they would shift the forces as needed, offensive, defensively, or whatever. But I don't plan on building, and they've also tweaked this in some of the stuff what they've done in Black Ice, is to try to make super divisions of like just one battalion and 4 battalions of, or 1 brigade and 4 brigades of artillery, or something that is some sort of super killer kind of divisions. I'm not going to be building those, but I will look, like I say, to build some infantry divisions with greater rocket artillery setup. I might do something like a light and heavy artillery unit or something like that in one division as time goes on, and I look into the division builds a little bit more. But we're not going to be doing wacky historical type things. Okay, single engine fighter prototypes. The research has advanced on that. That is great. So it grays them out, but also moves them to 1940. So we are still somewhat in the red because of various effects. We're not having good enough. Enough popularity. And spotting. Somebody stole our spotting. It doesn't say who. Building up our money as we do need to. We're also building up our metal and supplies. That's doing well. That's still coming down, but one thing here When we go here, we're still, or we just now, we're still building this up. So we're getting a lot more coming in just that one province on energy. Awesome trades there with Argentina. How's our production doing? I saw some factories getting deployed on the map there. Gonna get a few more. Okay, we need to look at some more. We're building these units, and as I said in earlier episodes, these are I'm setting them up and to use them in shall we say alternative theaters primarily. Maybe things like Norway, but more Yugoslavia, North Africa, other tropical destinations. And I'm doing part of this, keeping them cheap now, but using them to build up practical levels. Okay, now, what is the difference? Let's see here. I'm going to be making a video here now that I just sort of waited to get more of these unit types unlocked. I still haven't gotten the half tracks unlocked yet. But to go through and make a of build types out with the new setup. So that's 7, and fully motorized is 12, and an infantry is 4. Now the question comes down to is I think what I want to do here is and then you build the light vehicles and a divisional HQ. Now, engineers, how much is that going to? It's 2 whole ICs, but I think we can afford it here. Now, we have to start no longer thinking of, even though this is symboled for motorized artillery, they haven't updated the symbol. Here it is now medium artillery as opposed to artillery. Though I don't think it's specifically light artillery like the pack artillery. It should be light. And so this should give it, and although this speed here is somewhat deceptive, because when I was moving in, I guess I should have maybe saved some of the footage, but I guess I can do this now. Okay, let's move this division to here. This will work as a little bit of a... So we can look here and see that currently its default speed is 105%. And it's using horse transport. Now this division here with truck transport, but otherwise, now these are saying they're figuring this is the 75mm anti-tank or artillery pieces, which is fairly light. I would say the 100mm guns is what I would consider a standard gun of the period. But these and the pack engineers are generally just so that you didn't have that motorized and unmotorized engineers. Generally, just been fast, but this is normally had been your would be a lot slower here. Your Pack 36s without, motorizing it. So now we'll have this one march into here, and we see that it's moving at 115% of speed for just a little over 6.09. So that's doing a lot better than 4.22. Now here we have heavy flak with armored cars, but also with truck transport, and we're getting 142% of movement speed. So I don't know what we're gonna. Maybe we should build a few divisions and see what it's like with medium artillery to see if it's going to move faster or not. But my understanding is that if you build medium artillery and you start building the heavy, particularly like the heavy flak guns, and sticking them in regular divisions and having them, though I may do some experiments to show you guys, with horse transport, they're going to move awfully slow. So that you need to either full truck or at least light transport to move some of these heavier units. So we can keep the cost down some. I think there is a, well, don't think, let's look, 16 to 12, no, sorry, 15 to 12, 6 to 3, so between these two here for soft attack and hard attack. So the 12 and 15 is only 3 points different. The 6 to 8, I guess, more packs or something in the infantry brigade. So they also have a lot better piercing attack too. But those two things. So the motorized infantry brigade will be more, and this is just basically a faster version of this, the semi-motorized. But that's sort of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a relatively cheap divisions that aren't cheap in the sense of weaker than your standard infantry division, if you will, but with a bit more speed, so that you can push into enemy territory faster. The downside, obviously, here is fuel consumption. Light vehicle transport is not that heavy a fuel consumption. My understanding, truck is heavier, and the heaviest will be the half tracks that will use it. The horse transport is no fuel consumption. Your para divisions, you can move them, you can make them like we have that those two event created ones. No support units, but if you want to, you can attach light vehicles to it. They are air mobile, but I do believe that they will take up a lot of space, meaning you got to use a lot of transports to get them airborne. And so if you're just going to drop them on Oslo and have the battle in Oslo, you'd rather have more units hitting with more power coming in. But if you were going to use your paras also as ground troops and want to move them around, or if you were going to say air transport them, airlift them across over to India or some other place like that, and you wanted them to be mobile once they get there, then you'd want to have the light vehicles with them. So it's it's choice, and that's what a lot of this really comes down to, is choice. So we're going to build this 12 ICs. We're going to build a couple of these, and then we're going to take the Gneisenau and down. I'm leaving, unlike last time, because I am I am looking at this as a longer range game than the last time. So we're going to get 25 ICs being used on those divisions there, but we're going to keep the Scharnhorst in production, another flotilla of destroyers operating there. We will be getting some infantry divisions. None, well, we got to place some of those. Okay. I hope that's helpful. And I'm going to make a proper how-to, my version of the tutorial on division composition. I've just waited until I had a game that had a bunch of the options to show you, meaning units researched. The 7th Flieger Division, yes, we want that. 7th Flieger Division. This was this came first. The other two divisions, just because of various effects, either the amount of supplies or other things required, is fired slightly different timed. So we want that. Was that in the production line, or it didn't give me an option? No, it should be on the map. So yeah, so it's also there with students. So now with that and the other two divisions, we have a very excellent starting position for the airborne troops. We also have, because I knew that this was going to be a fairly long production cycle, I thought I got a paratrooper in there. Yeah. Now this is the 7th Fallschirmjäger Division as opposed to the 7th Flieger Division. So you see my division composition is 1 HQ and 2 paras. I might at some point, if I get earn some elite HQs, I may swap out the HQ somewhere else. So, and if you want to get the whole thing here, a bunch of these, like this one, it's just Alexei's putting in, they, in my opinion, showed up a little too early, but you want them a little earlier than maybe historically available, is cool HQs that basically are just, to give you the counters. And they're better than average HQs, my understanding. They're not the elites, but they're the one up from the standard HQ, divisional HQs. So here these are, again, an HQ and the 1 brigade. They'll be effective, but probably by the time you see this, I'll have a tutorial set up for these. Okay, the Sudeten-SA. I looked into this extensively in my research. Well, as extensively as I could on the internet, basically. I found 2-3 books that had anything substantial on the SA post 1934. Everything else in books I was, recommended, some very nice recommendations. Thank you guys. But whenever I went and looked online in Amazon in the talk description, they talked about the SA from like 1924 to 1934 or whatever, and realized that they're talking about the SA as it was up until Rome's death, which doesn't help me in, it could give me some background information, but doesn't directly help me in dealing with the 1936 and later period. Now, this unit here, a bunch of stuff showed up here. This unit here, this Sudeten Deutsch Selbstschutz. There was a which just represents, I don't know that they had flat guns, But there was a rather large, moderately well-equipped Sudeten Deutsch military units that were set up, and they were set up in Germany. They did do raids, not so much like border attacks, but sort of sneak across the border and go do something, blow something up, shoot somebody, whatever, and come back. And they were doing some of that kind of stuff, and that's what this unit here represents. They weren't part of the German army. They weren't part of anything else. But they were set up and supplied and supported by the Germans. I'm forgetting some of the details that I looked up, but that's basically what they were. Once the Sudeten land became part of Germany, a lot of these guys, and there were many more than 6,000. There were, I think, about 20,000 plus of the men enrolled in the Sudeten commandos, or whatever. I'm forgetting exactly what Sudeten Freikorps or whatever it was. I forget what it's called. They were, like I say, there were about 20,000 of them there, so there were quite a few of them. A good portion of them, as well as a good portion of others, because this is not really considered a combat unit as an offensive military force, but more of a political militia type unit. So they formed up the Sudaten-SA. Like I say, a lot of that. Unlike when we talked about Austria, there was an Austrian SA that operated sometimes legally, sometimes illegally in Austria. 95+% of its members remained in Austria, where like the Austrian SS, a lot of them spent a lot of their time in Germany, and then smuggling themselves in one manner or another across the German border for purposes, and then going back. And they were based in Germany, where the SA was based in Austria. So prior to getting to Sudetenland, there was no Sudeten-SA, but afterwards they set up the Sudeten-SA. Oh, here it is, Sudeten Deutsches Freikorps. Like I said, 26,000. I should read these things as I'm talking about them. So many former members of this group, as strong at its peak. So there was at least 26,000 at its peak that they had gone through a level of military training. I don't know if it was a good level, a bad level, if some were better, some were worse. I don't know, but they had gone through some training programs. So in the Sudeten Deutsches Freikorps. See, I was remembering sort of correctly. So a lot of them joined the SA. And that's what this is. This is Victor Luntz, and you can see, and I sort of somewhat clipped out, but there's rows behind here of all these SA men for these units, and this is their swearing in ceremony that Luntz attended, and whatever. That's one of the color tabs for the Sudeten-SA units. I think that's 3rd Battalion of the 94th Standarten, or Regiment, is how that would read. So we'll see if we have it. So we get Sudeten, Spreiter Deutsches Reich. We'll get that now. This will be part of it. So the Sudeten-SA group. Here. Now I have, well, see, I don't have the brigade. I don't have the actual individual Sudeten Standarte here, but so their brigades numbered 100 through 104. And it's under May, or Franz May is the leader, and we're going to attach him. We're going to attach him to the, I don't remember whether, well, for the moment we'll just attach him to the nearest, say, Obergruppe. This is a group, Overgroup. And so now you can somewhat see it a little better here. You got the Sudeten-SA spread out in these regions. And as you can, sorry about this, the Austrian SA's headquarters was in Linz, not in Vienna or Wien, but it was in Linz, Austria. So you'll see that is all attached. Now one thing, coming up in 39, so fairly shortly, we're going to have an event that removes all of these SA units and replaces them with another one with the same names, same starting location. So if you've moved them, no problem, but they're going back to wherever they were, same names, but they're going to go from approximately, well, this because it's a reserve, setup, but what would be a full strength of 3,000 man unit to a 1,000 man unit for wartime. I just decided not to go through, for both Austria and the Sudetenland, go through that, put this down at a 3,000 man unit, and then when you go through it again, have to redo it. So I just did it once. What you will want to do though is click on the Sudeten-SA, at least I think you should. Click on the Sudeten-SA grouping, go to this green line here for the divisions, which will select all of them and below, and then go up here and click here so that they do not get upgrades. Because I want to use them as internal security, and let's just say if for some theoretical reason, it's not going to happen at this point, but if Czechoslovakia was to go to war with you, so if you were playing multiplayer, or if some other thing was happening and France were to declare war, you would have some additional troops here. So, but they're not, for me, looking like main frontline troops. I'm leaving them as reservists with old junk, old rifles, not many of them, that kind of thing. So I'm not having them upgrade to keep them up to date. Okay, the maneuvers, another event from George 1941, Chancellor Adolf Hitler along with Generals von Brauchitsch, ended a two-day visit to the autumn maneuvers of 2nd Army Corps in Grossbond, Pomeranian. So you can see Hitler there in Brauchitsch, all the early war equipment. And so they go in and, they're training up to use and figure out how to use these, what we come to call nowadays blitzkrieg. So we'll gain a little bit in tank radio and radio communication and some more officers for some supplies, costing the cost to do the maneuvers and training of more officers. An official visit of Admiral Holthy, right here, the regent of the Kingdom of Hungary. He was an admiral, and this is up in Kiel. You can see the bottom part of the Hungarian symbol, the bottom part of the swastika, and there's Hitler, of course, and I don't right offhand know who these admirals are from just looking at them. But he really liked ships. Obviously, he was an admiral in the old Austro-Hungarian Empire. So he's come up for a visit, so this improves, and this is part of the building of the relationships between Austria and Germany. There was a certain amount of tension. It wasn't much, and I may be sort of overplaying it a bit, but we've talked about, and which I interpreted the event as improving relations with Hungary, but there was concerns over German expansionism over population of German-speaking peoples, and there were pockets of German-speaking peoples in Hungary, to where in, chunk of a province here, I don't know, where, they would be the significant majority in, some little spot. But there weren't, to my knowledge, any major contiguous to Germany or major sections of Hungary that were German-speaking. It was just various pockets and then intermixed in other places. So this allays their fears, and I also think, because if you notice the date on this, it's because it's set to go at right about this time. They've taken Austria, so now they share the border. They've taken part of the Sudetenland, and I would really think that they're talking about Czechoslovakia. I don't know how much they were looking at dismembering Yugoslavia, because Yugoslavia does come into the Axis historically. But they were also talking about their old enemy of Romania and what had been Austro-Hungarian territory, and the Hungarians were seeing it as theirs. I don't know the population ethnicities right offhand for this region at this time in Romania, whether it was more Hungarian or more Romanian or just some other ethnicity that was part of the the old Austro-Hungarian Empire. But so I've taken this as sort of like, hey, we're good buddies and we'll help you expand Hungary, because coming up here, once they take the rest of Bohemia and Moravia apart, not the rest of all of Czechoslovakia, but Bohemia and Moravia, all this part of what would otherwise be Czechoslovakia goes to Hungary, and there's other expansions. So this is the nice step onto that line. Okay, I think this has been long enough for this episode. We will end this here. Again, thanks for viewing. If you have any questions, comments, please post, and thank you for liking these videos. The more videos are watched, not just views, but the more time they're watched, it helps promote their visibility up on YouTube, and the more that a video is liked, promotes it up visibility, and that's always helpful for me. The more people watch, the more I can do, really, ultimately more programs. Thanks so much.